Welcome to Super Context, a podcast autopsy of media.
How we consume it and how it informs our everyday culture.
I'm Christian Sager, a writer and a designer.
And I'm Charlie Bennett, a librarian and a radio raconteur.
Each episode is us trying to understand the entertainment world that we all live in.
Just a little bit better. Today's episode is about the 3 seasons of I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. This sketch show mixes surreal humor, cringe comedy, and an everyman lead performer to craft an exploration of anxiety, status, and societal fear. It still manages to make its audience laugh with joy. We talk about how and why the show was created, and whether it quiets or riles up our own anxieties.
You can find show notes for this episode on Patreon at patreon.com/supercontext. Or you can write us an email at supercontextpodcast@gmail.com. Did you see yourself in this show, or did it trigger your anxiety?
So you promised me that this is not going to be you remember that sketch show, that we're not going to talk about the moments within each sketch that were brilliant or confounding, and that we're going to try and avoid this whole viral memeing that this show has done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because you got to keep me from doing it, because there's some parts of this show that I really want to just relive over and over and over again.
Can I tell you my least favorite sentence in the English language?
Yeah.
Do you remember that episode of The Simpsons when ...
Yeah. Well, The Simpsons did invent modern comedy, Chris. You have to accept it.
I am a fan of sketch comedy. I like to laugh. I like weird comedy. I go to see stand-up regularly, but I acknowledge that it is almost always impossible for somebody who watched a thing that was funny to then repeat it to another human being in a way that conveys the same level of humor.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. But the reason that I do that, the reason that I say, hey, remember that, whatever, is to try and relive that moment of discovery, that the first time it happened. There's a thing that I do probably once a year, if not 3 times a year, which is talk with my brother about all the things I felt when I first saw the pre-taped call-in show on Mr. Show. Do you know that sketch?
I don't. That is one of the shows that I have not spent a lot of time with, and I think you know why.
Yeah.
We've talked about it.
Yep. Well, this is a David Cross sketch, so you might be able to get through that.
Okay.
But it's a rather crystalline bit of sketch perfection that involves business and performance and a concept, and it reveals itself almost like a puzzle box show reveals its mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will relive it with Jack, and I'll be like, that's the moment. And then of course the thing with at the start, and then you find out why he's like that, and then the idiots moment, like all that kind of stuff. And it's like chasing a high. It's like going after that first feeling. The thing is, with really great sketches, I think sometimes you can kind of get there performing it back and forth a little bit.
So recently I wrote about something called the reminiscence bump that I learned about, which I know you know about because you proofread the piece that I wrote before I sent it out.
I was going to pretend that this was news to me, man.
And I might get it a little bit wrong here, but I believe the idea behind the reminiscence bump is that when we experience something for the first time that gives us that kind of sense of euphoria and it releases chemicals into our brain, usually something kind of pop culture related, we can re-trigger that experience through nostalgia. And what you're describing, I think, is a variation of that, right? So every time you're doing that, you are getting your brain to release, I don't know, endorphins, serotonin, whatever, something that feels good. right? And so it makes sense, like in the same way that we like to listen to the music that made us feel good in our teens and early 20s. And I'm going to guess that Mr. Show sketch probably came out in your early 20s.
I mean, do we even have to
Wait, did it come out between the years of 1990 and 1999?
do we
I
have to
know it
discuss
did.
this at all? I mean, one of the central gags of Mr. Show is that David Cross and Bob Odenkirk are 1 year apart in age, which makes one of them a boomer and one of them a Gen X kid. So
Oh, okay.
Odenkirk wears a suit and David Cross wears cut off cargo pants.
Um, but you get where I'm going with this, that
Of
like,
course, I get where you're
yeah,
going. Yeah.
I don't disregard that. And there are some shows, comedy shows, where I am similar to you and I can't help myself with it. And this is one of them.
And the reason I brought up my pre taped call in show experience is because the way that I relive that is so different from what it looks like the way you might relive this show is because of the conditions you were under when you saw the show and the thing it did for you.
Yeah. So the first time I saw I Think You Should Leave was when the second season came out. I missed the first season. And this was in 2021. So we were about a year into the pandemic at this point. We'd been through a lot. I don't know if you remember.
The collective we. This is the one time that everybody was under the same stresses.
Yeah. And so over the course of the 12 months previous to that, like I was in pandemic lockdown. I didn't have a job for 17 months. The entire country was in economic turmoil. The Black Lives Matter protests happened, and I was in Portland at the time, and it was scary. Um, the election, I don't know if you remember that little fun bit, that all went on.
I'm actually
And,
having a physical reaction to this list.
yeah, and January 6th. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of that happened. I'm probably missing stuff, but all of that happened in that window of time. And so when I first saw I Think You Should Leave, it felt like somebody else understood how insane the world felt to me. Every day I would get up and be like, what new, insane, awful thing is going to happen today? You
Yeah.
know? Honestly, like it that hasn't changed that much in the last 4 years because that was all like um macro level crisis. And then shortly after that, I went through my personal micro level crises, which I've written about and talked about. And so it's just been kind of a string of like, I, I feel like I'm surrounded by assholes. And this is what America feels like to me. And I also recognize that the very fact that I'm saying that, like people who say everybody around me is an asshole, usually they're the asshole, right? So I recognize that. But at the same time, like watching this show, I was like, oh, somebody else feels the same way I do. Like I feel seen by this show.
So there many of these sketches have a person who is just living their life and doing fine, and then someone who has taken something to a crazy extent,
Yeah.
a little bit of revenge, an attempt to be connected, a performative aspect of the personality, whatever. They've taken it far too far and they interact with the person just trying to live their life.
Yeah.
In those sketches, which person do you feel like you are?
I feel like the person just trying to live their life.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think you feel like the other person.
I do.
Yeah.
So as soon as I think you should leave entered into the hey, should we do a show on it? I felt like, oh, okay, so now we talk about cringe because
Mm.
this is floated around. This is, as you pointed out in the notes for this show, this is like horror for me.
Hmm. And there's many people I know who refuse to watch things like this
Yeah,
in the same way that they refuse to watch horror because they can't cope with how it makes them feel.
yeah. Like when Nathan for You and now many more shows with that guy in it have
Yeah.
came out, and uh some other, I think maybe the rise of, oh my god, look what happens to this person in this video. kind
Mm-hmm.
of social media stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have had such a hard time with cringe comedy, and I've never quite understood why. I certainly started from a place of I'm far too good for this, and you people should not be watching this. But what it really comes down to is I embarrass really easily, and I feel like I've embarrassed myself quite a lot in my life, especially the times in my life when I was not embarrassing easily because of drink or drugs or pure selfishness. And now I'm getting some retroactive embarrassments when I think of those
Mm.
times.
Mm-hmm.
I empathize, sympathize, relate, embody the person in these sketches who is taking it too far, who has lost it, who is causing all the trouble and is being looked at like a crazy person.
I like to think that I have empathy for other people around me, and it's something that I try to practice. But there are many times throughout my everyday where I just like either mentally or physically throw up my hands and I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing? You know? I'll give you an example. Literally, as I was driving on my way over here, this is Boston traffic, mind you. This kid tries to cut me off with his car and jump into the lane in front of me. And I give him what my friend Steve refers to as the hate wave. And I just stare him down and I keep going
Yeah.
and he stops. And then a cop comes up behind us, full on blaring the siren and lights on. And every other car pulls over to the side, as you're supposed to do, to let the cop through. This fucking kid sees everybody pull over and he's like, oh, this is great. I can just keep going. And he floors it and just keeps going as fast as he can until he can get to the light with this cop flying up behind him. And I just go, what the fuck are you doing? And that's this show.
Wait. I don't want to reopen the case, but which part is the show? Is the you being the person who says what's happening, or him being the one who drives ahead, or is
He's
the show the cop? I don't know. What's the
I think if this were a sketch in the show, he would be a Tim Robinson character and would just, you know what I mean? And
I
and
do.
and just is so narcissistic and in his own world that is incapable of seeing the context of the situation around him.
Yeah.
And I'm maybe one of the
Yeah.
non-cast characters who's just going, "What the fuck are you doing?"
All right. Today's episode is about the television show I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. This is a sketch comedy television series that was released on Netflix, 3 seasons across 4 years. First season came out in 2019, second season in 2021 after being delayed by COVID. The final season, number three, was released at the end of May of 2023. And these are short seasons. It's like what, 4 sketches tops per episode?
Something like that, maybe a little more, but then they're like I think they're under 30 minutes and
Oh, yeah, always
there's
under 30
what like
minutes.
6 episodes a season or
That's
something.
right.
Like
Yeah.
it's not a lot. Um
Very European in its own way.
I think that is the second time since our revival that you've said that about something that
I
we've
like saying it.
reviewed.
Yeah.
Very European. Um, uh, there's a good description in one of the articles that I pulled for research in this episode that I think kind of encapsulates the show if somebody is listening and they've never seen it. Or and this is by Keegan Kelly writing for Cracked. They say most sketches on the Netflix show start out in a grounded place, usually featuring Robinson's character in a mundane social situation where he makes a minor faux pas. Then the scene escalates to hyperbolic heights as Robinson's fixation on fixing his awkward moment turns him into a primordial entity of embarrassment who can't take his foot off the gas.
I mean, that sounds mostly right. I do think that there are a bunch of other types of sketches that float through the
I
show.
agree.
it's just that's the kind of sketch that seems to have made it. And let me be specific. A sketch that involves the main performer, writer, producer, Tim Robinson,
Hmm.
losing his shit appears to be the most memorable and most affecting kind of sketch in the show.
Yeah, I think I'd maybe make two caveats to this description. First of all, it's not always Tim Robinson who loses his shit. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. There are some times where he's the straight man,
Oh, for
and
sure.
there's another character who's being the crazy person. But really, like the title of the show says it. There's always a character who escalates a situation to a point where everybody else thinks, "I think you should leave."
Yeah.
You know?
And there are, of course, counterexamples to everything that we say here because it's a sketch show and it's got a bunch of performers and it's a it's a very rich and varied show. I mean,
Yeah.
for as short as it is, the sketches we described some off air real quick that do not connect to each other at all. You know,
Right. Yeah.
there's a motorcycle appreciating alien, and there's a guy who tries to take vengeance on the baby who cried during his flight 50 years before, or whatever it was.
Mm.
There's a focus group sketch, all kinds of stuff.
I think the thing that I would also dispute with the what we've described so far is that usually the character who's losing their shit in these sketches is not embarrassed. It is incapable of embarrassment,
Oh,
right?
that's interesting.
The ones that I think of that are my favorite, the person is completely uh so like out of tune with the rest of the world around them that they have no idea that everybody else is embarrassed on their behalf.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go with that. I think this might be a kind of Rorschach blot of a show. You know,
Yeah.
the thing you see in the sketches might be your fear or what you feel most confident about.
Well, let's unpack a little bit about this. Um, we've mentioned Tim Robinson a lot already. There are actually two people who create this show, Tim Robinson and Zach Kanan. But we'll start with Robinson because he's the one who's on screen the most. And I think folks assume, like, oh, he's the guy.
Well, his name is also in the title. The full title is I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's true. Who's this guy? Because when I first saw the show, I was like, where'd this guy come from? And actually, he's been around for a long
Yeah.
time. So he's a comedian actor who was a writer and performer on Saturday Night Live. He also co-created and starred in the show Detroiters. And Netflix did this show called The Characters, where I think like each episode was a different production team, and he and Zach Kanan did an episode of The Characters. And then as we're recording this, he and Zach Kanan have a new show on HBO called The Chair Company that they're doing together.
And I have watched several interviews with Tim Robinson now to try and get a feel for the artist as a person.
Hmm.
And it's amazing how he's nothing like his performer sort of persona.
Yeah.
Louis Chilton in The Independent describes Robinson as a raving, gurning, drooling, and all around singularly bizarre force of nature.
Yeah, I want to take a super context meta moment for a second. Doing the research for this episode, it was particularly fascinating to watch pop culture writers bend over backwards to try to come up with creative ways to describe Tim Robinson. And like,
There
we're going to
is,
get into some of them.
yeah, there is something special about how people responded to him. I
Hmm.
think there's something beyond, I don't know. I think I was about to say something beyond his own performance, but it's that, I mean, that's obvious anyway. Something about Tim Robinson being the kind of shouting, freaking out comedy persona at the
Hmm.
moment he was, with a little bit of danger,
Yeah.
with a little bit of strength too. It's a yeah, it's a conundrum.
So he broke through into SNL in 2012, and he was apparently hired as a cast member at the same time that A.D. Bryant and Cecily Strong were. Again, like when I found out he had been on SNL, I was like, wait, really? I don't remember him at all. And then I went back and watched, I don't know if you've seen any of the SNL sketches that he was in that made it to air. They're hilarious. Like they're really funny and you can tell, and I've seen interviews with both the cast and the crew on SNL where they're all just like, he's one of the funniest people we've ever worked with.
There's a clip I saw of him breaking up Kevin Hart.
Yeah, that's
And
one of them.
and the way they described that was the lines that Tim Robinson was speaking in the sketch that made Kevin Hart break character were not jokes. They weren't punchlines.
Hmm.
He was just doing that thing that some Saturday Night Live performers are known for, which is embodied a kind of weirdness and surprise that's always funny no matter what they say.
And yet, despite that something special that he had, he only was on the show for 1 year as a performer before he got pulled off. So, um, he's described here, I believe this is also from Louis Chilton, um, who says Robinson, a performer with a very specific tone and range, proved a difficult fit for Saturday Night Live. He transitioned after 1 year to a staff writing position, which was a first for somebody who was hired solely as a performer. As a writer, he faced the same problem. Many of his sketch ideas were shot down for being too auteur or simply too daft.
The example for Daft was a sketch about a leather life jacket for when cool guys fall off a boat, which I got to tell you is one of the funniest tweets I've ever read.
Yeah, I mean, just reading that sentence, I was like, I want to see that sketch. Um, so one thing that I knew before even doing the research, but it's more evident in the research, is that a lot of the things that he and Kanan wrote for SNL that didn't make it to air were repurposed for I Think You Should Leave.
Yeah, that's like the big lore for this show.
It-
Here is this
yeah.
Netflix comedy sketch show that was what Saturday Night Live couldn't handle, or other variations on that.
Yeah, I'm going to step outside and be a little subjective and a snarky little bitch for a second. I
I'm
don't know
sorry, for
about
a
you.
second.
I don't know about you, but I have various thoughts about this. I don't think SNL is good right now. I don't th and I think it has been getting progressively worse for a long time.
Hold on a second. I have to look up every other time someone has said these exact words in every year before this, all
Right.
the way back to the second year.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to say is that I think for everybody who ages along with the show, it feels like it progressively gets worse. And this little tidbit of behind the scenes mythos justifies all of us who feel that way so that we can be like, well, look, like this guy was clearly very funny and they just didn't get it, man, you know?
Yeah. Um, okay. Let's talk more about Rob. There's going to be a ton of this subjective stuff in this episode because at a
Yeah.
certain point, you can't engage with what people are saying without being like, and is it funny? Or was it, edgy enough, or whatever?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
here's some of that stuff you were talking about, the attempts at
This is the one I was thinking of.
writing this dude. Sam Anderson in the New York Times Magazine wrote this about Tim Robinson. It was strange to watch this man whose face I had studied through so many violent comic contortions in a subdued real life setting, meaning he's doing the interview and he's just being a regular guy and it's strange for him. Robinson's face is both anonymous and one of a kind. He has a big flaring dolphin fin of a nose, small deep set eyes that sit in little pools of shade, a warm gap toothed smile. His resting expression is bland, sweet, harmless. He looks most of the time like an absolutely standard middle aged white guy who might be sitting next to you at an airport or a marketing conference. Someone you would feel perfectly comfortable asking to watch your stuff if you had to get up to go to the bathroom. But when Robinson activates that face, all kinds of amazing things happen. Tiny micro expressions ripple across it at high speed. He seems to have extra muscles in his forehead. Okay, I can't read anymore.
Right? Like it's a little over the top. And I'm going to say this. I think that this piece actually is the best written piece that I read during the research
Oh, there's
about this
nothing
show.
wrong with this.
But this kind of writing,
It
right? This
just keeps
MFA
going.
class of like, I have to show that I can write every detail about this guy's face.
um, so Sam Richardson is quoted in this piece. Sam Richardson is now kind of a movie comedian,
Yeah,
although I think,
he's blowing up.
yeah, Richardson's from Detroit, just like Tim Robinson is. And he said he first saw Robinson perform in a bowling alley in the suburbs. Richardson said, I was like, this guy is the funniest dude in the world. His cadence is so specifically his own. You can't teach it. It's incredibly human. It's human beyond human. Hands down, like all hands go down, I've never seen Tim flounder in a scene. We all flounder, but he could always just find the ball and dunk it. It was incredible. He was the best improv comic he had ever seen.
We should mention, Richardson is in this show in some of the sketches, but he is also, I believe, the co-creator and co-star of Detroiters with
Yeah.
Tim Robinson.
And he's a pretty funny performer himself.
Yeah, he's great.
But they were friends when Tim was on SNL. And Richardson says, Tim would call me every Sunday morning after Saturday Night Live and just be so broken down. He'd say things like, maybe I'm not funny. He was grossly unhappy. Richardson went to an SNL taping once, and he remembers seeing Robinson standing in a Santa costume waiting to go on because finally one of my sketches made it to air. It was a dress sketch that got cut at the very last second, and it devastated Robinson. Now,
Yeah.
I read that quote, and then I happened to hear an explanation of what that sketch was by happenstance on an interview.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, on Seth Meyers. So this is a description of what that sketch was. It was called Santa Traps. There was a guy who made a trap to catch Santa, but it was just a
Hmm.
bear trap. And he kept trapping bears. He catches like 3 bears during the sketch. Got him. Oh, it's a bear. That's the sketch.
Um, yeah, I don't know how much Seth Meyers you watch. I'm a hit or miss with him, but they do this thing on that show sometimes. I can't remember the title of this thing, but what they do is they bring SNL folks onto the show and they give them a chance to perform a sketch that got cut from
Oh
the
yeah,
show.
okay. I've heard that. Yeah.
And they're often really good. But again, like maybe that's just my sense of humor. I think the way they make these decisions is they do dress, and if the audience doesn't laugh enough,
Oh
they
yeah,
cut
yeah.
it.
But also if something goes long or if, something
Yeah.
happens in the anyway, this is not an SNL super context and there never will be one. Okay, along with Tim Robinson, the other writer and main person for I Think You Should Leave is Zach Kanan, who was on that same episode that I saw the interview that I
Hmm.
got the Santa Traps explanation. And it's quite obvious that Kanan is the writer, sometimes performer, and that Tim Robinson is the writer performer, just from couch presence.
Yeah. There's this interview in Vulture with the whole interview is specifically about one sketch on I Think You Should Leave. I think it's about the focus group sketch
Yeah, that's the
because
one that everyone knows about.
right, like it got memeified and was shared all over social media. Um, I'm not I don't know if I should read this transcript out loud, but essentially the way it goes is the interviewer almost says exactly what you just said. He says to them, I get the sense that Zach is sort of the structure and cerebral guy, and Tim is an improviser and is more of a wild card. And they immediately were like, no, that's not the case. And Robinson, I feel like this interview plays out like a sketch on the show because Robinson's like, I'm not a wild card. I don't like that. And then they go back and forth about this, where the interviewer just says, this isn't what I'm saying. This is what other people say. And Robinson just keeps coming back to it. He's like, you said the words wild card. I am not a wild card. And it's like, was he Was he making a sketch out of the interview to make this more fun? It's just kind of amusing. And then they start joking around about it, and Kanan says, "Well, actually, I'm just better at typing." And then Robinson says, "I'm a wild card at typing. That's one thing." That kind of stuff. So you can get a sense just from this interview of like their interplay, how they bounce off of one another and kind of create these sketches. It's interesting because the first time I watched all of I Think You Should Leave, I kept seeing Zach Kanan show up in
Yeah,
sketches. And I was like, oh, that guy must be like friends with Tim Robinson. I didn't realize he was the co-creator.
yeah. There's lots of cuts to him looking at something and being confused by it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he's in the Focus sketch.
Oh, is he? I only noticed him because I had just seen that interview and I watched a couple sketches just now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to talk about that sketch. I want to talk about why I think that sketch is interesting in comparison to the rest of the show
Okay.
because it does sort of break the formula, right? So there's the focus group, and there's one guy in the focus group who is not Tim Robinson, who is the I Think You Should Leave character, right? He's being an asshole. Everybody thinks that he's an asshole, and they're all just kind of like, what's happening right now? He's being a bully to one of the guys in the focus group. And there's a moment in that sketch where everything flips and all of a sudden everybody else in the room agrees with the asshole and they all start bullying the Zach Kanan character. And the Zach Kanan character is like, what is happening? Why is everybody acting like this all of a sudden?
And that sketch has been broken into all the response gifs, right? It's like
Right. Yeah.
every line, almost every line in that sketch has served as someone's tweet or
Yeah.
text or uh, reaction, Instagram post or whatever to something. And that I think that's the ineffable part of this show. That's the thing that we're not going to be able to get to any
Hmm.
answer about. But the show is quotable. It is in many ways compartmentable. It's like discrete, like the pieces of it
Yeah.
break apart. Their sketches are good, they're structured, and they have rises and falls and ends, but also within them are these moments like really good jazz solos in songs. There's like these
Mm.
moments that
Hmm.
you can detach and appreciate just by themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And that'll come up a little bit in some of the other articles that we reference, but I think it's important to say I don't get the sense that either of these guys are purposely crafting the show that way. I don't think they were thinking to themselves, this will make a great Instagram story,
No,
right?
it seems like they were just honest to themselves and their process.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the direct show director who was actually in that interview that you just started to quote.
Mm-hmm.
Akiva Schaffer, who is one of the SNL folks that was part of the Lonely Island.
Yeah.
So he says, it always feels like improv when you're watching I Think You Should Leave, but it is not. This was the most amazing thing. He said they're meticulous about their scripts. Everything that feels slightly off is written exactly that way. In fact, I forget if it's deeper in the notes here or if I just read it before I got online with you, but one of the performers, the woman whose job is tables,
Patti
she,
Harrison.
Patti Harrison
Yeah.
said when she was part of the writing process, like in on a writing session, they would transcribe her riffs on what lines she could say.
Yeah.
So the ums and the uhs are actually legit. They are taking those pauses, they are taking those moments and putting them into the script and then saying perform it like that.
Yeah, so that's actually in the notes. It's a little further down, but Harrison mentions that the reason why they chose her for the show was they saw her on Instagram.
Oh no, the snake
Um,
eats its own tail.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, you're exactly right. And the reason why she found this out was actually after um being on the show, they invited her to be in the writer's room. Like she helped write for
Yeah.
some of the show. And we'll talk a little bit very briefly about like people like her who kind of guest star in the show frequently. But her, I don't know if you've ever seen her stand up, but
I haven't.
the exact same vibe as this
Okay.
show.
So going back to Schaefer, um, he says uh, that the way the language works on the show is very precise, despite it feeling improv, despite it feeling sort of agitated and extemporaneous. Many of the show's men, the writer of this piece says, when they are agitated, speak like children, their words forced out by the pressure of need, right on the edge of coherence. Robinson shared a memory from his childhood. Once, when he was a kid, his family moved to a new house and he and his brothers went out to play in the backyard. A boy next door stared at them, so they stared back until finally, agitated, the boy yelled, "Stop, keep looking at me."
Mm. Hmm.
And until I kind of read through our notes here and then rewatched some of the sketches, I didn't realize just like um how odd the phrasing is of some of the standout lines. Like
Yeah.
what is it? I can't know how to hear any more about tables.
Yes. Yeah, there's a cadence to some of the lines, and I think that is part of what makes the show quotable too, is that like they're purposely using grammar wrong
Yeah.
but in a way that hooks itself in your brain.
Yeah, they're crafting it instead of having like a collapse of syntax or a collapse of grammar. It's finding an odd way to say something that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked about Schaefer. Schaefer is a part of Lonely Island, as you mentioned, but Schaefer and Andy Samberg and Yorma Tacone, they are also members of Lonely Island, and all of them are producers on this show. And they briefly, or Schaefer briefly talks about how this came about, because essentially Schaefer was the one who got them this
Yeah.
Netflix
Do you know what
deal.
this reminds me of?
No, what? Tell me.
Reservation Dogs.
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
This
Well,
is
I mean, I think this is just how almost all of this stuff happens now, man. Like,
some chunk of
it's who
how
you
show
know.
business works. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it does seem like someone with success, and in this case it was Schaefer, was in a meeting and the folks who run the business
Hmm.
said, well, uh, we're thinking about maybe a sketch show. What are your thoughts? So let me just read it. I was just a fan, Schaefer says, from having seen them a couple times in the show, which is Saturday Night Live. But then, really, from the characters, when I saw that, I was like, oh, there's so much more here. And the characters is just as good as anything on the show that we made. Like a year had gone by, and I was kind of like, why doesn't everybody notice that this is the funniest thing? The clip I saw of Tim Robinson and Zach Kanan's The Characters looked completely indistinguishable from I Think You Should Leave.
Yeah, I've seen a clip from it too. Is it the pointing guys on the stage?
No, this was the Frank Sinatra dude who rolled
Oh,
snake
yeah.
eyes on the. Anyway,
Yeah.
uh, and Schaefer says, so I was just telling a lot of people, like, oh, did you see this? And kind of that stuff.
Hmm.
And then I had a lunch with Robbie Praw in that department at Netflix. And he just kind of said, I'm thinking about getting into sketch if you have any ideas or anything. Now, it's hilarious to me. I assume that this is Schaefer who can't speak, who has all the or whatever's and likes and all that,
Yeah.
which I guess is why he's a director. But also, it does feel like that's probably the tone of it. Like, hey, we're going to work on a thing. What do you think? Can you make it happen?
The next part here is what I found especially interesting, especially as an insight into Netflix as a company and just show business in general. So Schaefer says he said, you know, it's really easy for somebody like Netflix to go to UCB and just pick some kids out, but he doesn't feel like younger performers like that might necessarily be ready for their own show. And as
Some
an
people might not
example,
know what UCB is.
oh, it's the Upright Citizens Brigade. It
Yeah.
is a like world-renowned improv group that has like multiple like schools and performance venues, at least two, right? There's
Yeah.
one in LA and one in New York.
And that's the important thing to remember is that it's like a school, with also
Yeah.
then performing groups. So he's saying uh, it's easy for Netflix to just go to where folks are learning to do this
Yeah.
and scoop up the ones who are charismatic and say, okay, learn how to make a sketch show on our network.
It's what SNL does with Second City and the
Mm-hmm.
Groundlings and yeah. Um, so Schaefer uses as an example Key and Peele. Key and Peele had been doing, according to Schaefer, 15 years of sketch comedy before they got that show on Comedy Central. And that's why the show worked so well because it was laser focused. They knew what they were doing. And that's why Schaefer recommended Tim Robinson and Zach Kanan. What I think is fascinating about this is that the guy from Netflix who says, I'm thinking about doing a sketch show, didn't then go and look at The Characters, which is a Netflix sketch show, and say, who from this show could potentially, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
that they don't have the insight to look at their own material. I mean, maybe he did, and Schaefer was just sort of reinforcing that, but it is insight into this
Yeah.
business.
Well, for all you know, this was the first time he said it out loud. This
Well,
could,
also things that are shiny and new are
mhm.
often, more attractive than turning to somebody who knows what they're doing and has been around for a while.
But then Schaefer says something about his story that's very particular. He said to this Netflix executive, if you give Tim Robinson and Zach Kanan a show, they're not going to waste it. They're going to know how to do it.
Yeah, yeah,
And that to me it's really interesting because what that says to me is that a lot of folks get shows and waste it because they don't know what they're doing. And they think that they're prepared to learn how to do the show by getting it, like
yeah.
a band saying we'll figure out how to record the album after we get signed.
I'll be honest that I don't currently have a Netflix subscription, so I don't know necessarily, but I think we can all say, all of us who've consumed streaming media, especially Netflix, that there's such a glut of content that there are things that get made, go up, you see their little thumbnail for a week, and then they don't, for whatever reason, either get the marketing love that they need from the company or the attention that from an audience that they need to float to the top, and they just get buried in that avalanche of content.
Yeah. And do you have a theory on why we have an avalanche of content? Like what is the strategy there? I have my answer. What's yours?
I don't know that I have a theory necessarily, but in the previous iteration of this show, which is a different era of Netflix than right now, we did talk about this, right? That like they're trying to make content so fast so that there's always something new, that something shiny and new, like I just said, that they can push out into the marketing cycle. It's like an anti-strategy in a way because they're spending so much money on content that I believe, from what I understand, like they don't make all that much money back on the subscriptions. That might have changed in the last 5 years, and especially so as Charlie and I are recording this episode, Netflix has entered into an agreement to buy Warner Brothers, which my first thought when I heard that was like, where are they getting the money to buy Warner Brothers from? I thought they were in the hole.
Now they're borrowing against future earnings.
That might be it. Yeah. But then also what's going on is that Paramount is trying to make a hostile bid takeover of Warner Brothers. So Netflix and Paramount are in this bidding war essentially for Warner Brothers.
And we should all be scared.
So, okay, sorry, I diverged. What
Yeah.
is your theory?
I think that it's mostly about the interface and the choices and making sure that there's something you haven't seen the little thumbnail before on every screen that you go to so that
Yeah.
you're always, and you might never watch it, but as
Hmm.
soon as you think you've seen everything on a streaming service, you're out.
I saw a stand-up comedian recently do a bit, and I can't remember her name, so I'm sorry that I'm not citing this. But her bit was essentially, in order to wind down, I like to turn Netflix on and scroll through
Yeah. Yeah.
all of the various options, and I do that for about half an hour, and then I turn it off and I go to bed.
Yeah. That sounds right. Sometimes when I look at Apple TV, I let it show me all the previews that like the carousel gives me automatically.
Hmm.
And I've noticed that when I get to the end of that and it's done and I look at all the, top 5, top 10 things that I have already seen advertised before, I usually have a thought along the lines of, man, there's nothing on. There's nothing here,
Hmm.
which is insane.
It's insane. Not only is that insane, but then think about what are there, four other streaming services that are also all just
Yeah.
churning out content. And I feel exactly the same way. Like same thing where I'm like, I don't want to watch any of this. You know? Um,
What is happening, Chris? Why
s-
is the entire world depressed?
I I wish I could answer that, but I do have a question for you
Okay.
that may help us answer it. Have you ever heard of Irony Point?
Not until today.
Me either. So apparently they are also producers on this show. And I decided I'm gonna Google Irony Point in the name of these producers. And the only thing I could find was their site.
Yeah.
There were a few just like IMDb listings and things like that, but there wasn't anything of any substance about like who this company is. And so what I'm about to read to you is what's on their site.
All right. Go for it.
I'm not going to read this out loud. I'm going to skim through it because it's long. But so the two producers from Irony Point who worked on I Think You Should Leave are Alex Bach and Daniel Powell, and they are the co-founding partners of Irony Point. Alex is also the founder of, just this phrase alone bothers me, podcast venture Radio Point. Um, Alex apparently spent years working in production on film and TV, commercials, short films, and digital content. And then won an Emmy and produced a number of projects under Irony Point. Here's a list of some of the projects that this company has also produced. Phantasmos, which is an HBO show. I've never heard of that.
I have not either.
Amy Schumer's Netflix special Emergency Contact, the nonfiction podcast Number One Dad, which is but produced by my former employers, iHeartMedia. Well, actually, not my former employers, but the company that bought
Some
my
version
former
of your former
employer.
employers.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. The Borg that has your former employers.
exactly. And then they've made feature films such as Scare Me, We Strangers, and Bex. I haven't heard of any of these things other than the Amy Schumer special, and I Think You Should Leave. Let's see if Daniel Powell has anything further along the lines here. So, Emmy and Peabody winning co-founder of Irony Point. He has executive producer and writing credits on Life and Beth, Ugly Americans. I have heard of that. I haven't seen it. Isn't Pete Holmes on Ugly Americans?
That sounds right.
Inside Amy Schumer. And then I think this is a Michael Che special, That Damn Michael Che. And then a critically acclaimed sketch series, Astronomy Club from Netflix. Okay, perfect example. There's one that I don't think either of us have heard of, right? So
Yeah. I have no idea what most of this is.
yeah. And again, like we're not the target audience, right? Like we're middle-aged men. But it's just interesting that like as we were just talking about Netflix's strategy of just putting content out, here's a list of all of this content that is barely ringing a bell for either of us.
They're a production and development company, but production and development companies often are simply creatives. Forgive me for using the word
Yeah.
creatives who have access to money folks. and
Yeah.
thus are able to say, hey, this is what we're going to spend the money on, and this is how we're going to make money on it.
They're the ones who have the lunches.
I mean, yes, but also they're the ones who can say to a person, much like Schaefer did in the story, oh, what about this pair? They would
Yeah.
do a great sketch comedy. A development company can also say, oh, this movie that has these three beats and would sell in these markets, we can make that for this amount of money if
Hmm.
you have it. And we'll make back our money before it even leaves the production company because we'll sell the rights first.
I miss the days, Charlie, when it was just a bunch of dentists who just pooled their money together to pay for a
That
movie.
was such a short period of time, though, dude. That was just like, that was about as long as it took to watch the movie Ed Wood. That's how long the dentists were viable as production partners.
Um, let's talk about the guest stars on this show. So there's a lot. Sam Richardson, we've mentioned. Patti Harrison, we've mentioned. Connor O'Malley, who is somebody I discovered through this show, who I think is a similar level of genius and humor. Tim Heidecker was in it. Andy Samberg, Fred Armisen, Vanessa Bayer, Beck Bennett, bunch of SNL people. Cecily Strong, Kate Berlant, Julia Butters, Io Edebiri, Will Forte, Paul Walter Hauser, Jason Schwartzman, Brandon Wardell, Fred Willard, and Stephen Yoon. I mean, that's just like a murderer's row of talent.
Yeah.
So, and many are from SNL, but I think what that shows is that there are people in the comedy world who already knew who these guys were and were like, yeah, of course we want to work with you.
Yeah. And there's obviously some connections to, the SNL production pipeline, but then
Yeah.
also, Bob Odenkirk is on there and Fred Willard from two different schools of sketch and
Yeah.
improv comedy.
Yeah.
Just people who like working with each other, connecting, people dropping in to do a single role on a Netflix sketch show.
Hmm.
That's that's just the love of the game right there, man.
Fred Willard, rest in peace.
Yeah.
Star of Toby Hooper's Salem's Lot.
Yeah. That's what Fred Willard
Never
should be known
forget.
for. Hey, Chris, let me ask you something.
Yeah,
How much do you think I could bench?
that is a out of left field question. I'm gonna guess bench 100 pounds.
Okay. Fuck you. And also, that was my honoring Fred Willard from Best in Show.
Oh yeah, yeah. I got it. How much can you bench?
I don't know, probably like 25, 50 pounds. I don't
How much does your biggest child weigh?
know. All right, let's get
That's how
into this
much.
Patti
That's how I
Harrison
was trying to
stuff.
guess.
This is the Patti Harrison material that I already pre-vised. So Patti Harrison, who you said did stand up also.
Yeah, she's done a bunch of different things. I've seen her stand up online before. Yeah, I think she's primarily or originally was known for like social media sort of
Yeah,
influencer humor. Yeah.
I saw her on the Jimmy Kimmel show doing research for this. So one of her
Uh-huh.
interviews on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and it was not quite performance art, but she was definitely doing a character that was herself and
Yeah.
just like letting it sit, like not quite Tig Notaro level of deadpan and refusal to break, but pretty close.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast one time that was Trixie and Katya from RuPaul's Drag Race doing an interview with Patti Harrison, and it was hilarious. Just
Okay,
the three of their sense of humors just gelled together so well. Yeah.
nice.
Um,
Here's the thing that I was trying to remember. Harrison says after spending time in the writer's room for the second series of I Think You Should Leave, it's super scripted. People assume there's lots of improv in it, but there's not. Kanan types exactly the way you're saying it. So it's all there in the script, all the uhs. They are brilliant in knowing how important attention to detail is in comedy. It does matter to fight for those little things. There are parallels between the show and Harrison's live work, the writer says, a similar humor that takes us to unexpected extremes.
Yeah, I mean, I found out about Harrison and O'Malley from this show and then went on to watch more of their,
Yeah.
solo stuff. And they definitely they exist in this similar universe. Like their voices fit together. I think
And
I recommended Connor O'Malley's special to you where he like pretends to be a motivational speaker. The whole thing is him as a motivational
yeah,
speaker with
you
a
did tell me
PowerPoint
about that.
presentation.
And I will confess to you, that kind of gag,
Yeah.
it's hard for me to watch.
I, I loved it, but I get it. I do understand that it is like an acquired taste for sure.
When I've watched I Think You Should Leave, I sometimes have to skip sketches.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense, and I think that's the other thing too, right? Is like we keep talking about like, oh, this show's so popular, is memeified, all this stuff, but that is within like it's in a bubble, right? Like at my lunch table of 10 people from my department going out and talking about the chair company today, only two of the 10 had even heard of it, and that's
Yeah.
on HBO.
Well, remember, the numbers now for a successful show are tiny compared to what a successful show had to
Right.
pull 15, 20 years ago.
Yep, exactly. So speaking of which, the reason for that is a company called Netflix. No, it's not the only
But it is
reason.
kind of.
So who is Netflix? Like, this is a company that we all, and when I say we all, 75% of Americans pay money to.
So,
How insane is that?
yeah. And here's the wild thing,
And they don't make money?
they continue. They're ranchers, they make enough to pay for last year's debts. It's amazing to me to read the description of Netflix that we are using here because this is the streaming service that we're talking about here.
Yeah, so there is a distinction between the company Netflix and the company that used to send the DVDs out. Netflix is the streaming service. I forget, I should have written it down, but there is a different name. It has the name Netflix in it, but let's say it's like Netflix Inc. or something.
Right, right.
That's the company that we used to get, and I say we, like that was what, 20 years ago now? So like there's people who could be listening to this show that didn't even know that you used to get DVDs in the mail from Netflix.
I feel like the first Netflix DVD I got was in 2002,
Yeah,
maybe
that sounds
2003.
similar. And I think that was what it said in the research too.
And it
But
feels like
yes,
there was a tremendous amount of time between that and then streaming services, but no,
not
because
really.
Netflix's subscription video on demand streaming service launched in 2007.
Hmm.
In 2025, it is the 18th most visited website in the world. And that sounds like, oh, 18, that's nothing. But do you know how many websites there are?
Hmm.
And also, you can probably think of the 17 real quick.
Pornhub.
Yeah, surely. But also, Google and Yahoo and what? Wikipedia
Well, I would
and
guess
IMDb and
the five stacks,
yeah.
or at least the top five. So this company, I never knew this before, and I swear we've done stuff about Netflix before. I guess we've just never dug into this before. And I will say this, I didn't do a deep dive. I'm sure there's stuff about the history of Netflix that we're skimming over here.
Oh, yeah.
This is mostly pulled from Wikipedia entries, but
You're such a
I
son of a
I
bitch.
think it's important for us to at least acknowledge some of this stuff. So Netflix was founded by Mark Randolph and Reed Hastings in 1997. Here are a few factoids that I read in that two Wikipedia articles that I did not know before now that are very interesting. The first is, did you know, Charlie, that in the year 2000, they offered themselves to Blockbuster for $50 million and Blockbuster declined?
I did know that.
You did.
Only I didn't know the year, but I did know that the DVD by mail market was a little bit like VHS and Betamax.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not comparing Blockbuster to the quality of either one of those, but when it started happening, people wanted to get into the business, and Blockbuster thought that they could hack it.
Boy, were they wrong. Here's another, and this is one of these factoids that I read, and I was like, yeah, that confirms about how I assume everything works in the world. In 2014, Netflix as a company discovered that Comcast was purposefully throttling their traffic. And then Netflix announced they were going to pay Comcast to end this practice. That's wild.
Yeah. Do you remember all that
Like,
stuff
think
about?
about every time you were watching Netflix and all of a sudden
Yeah.
the screen paused and started spinning. That was because they weren't paying off Comcast.
What I mostly remember, and I'm going to confess this now in front of everyone. I remember talking to someone in 2005 or 4 and saying, I just don't think there's ever going to be like, you know, video over the internet. I mean, look how slow it takes. Look how slow it is. Look how long it takes. It's so hard. You can't even download a picture. Like, yeah, I don't know how they're going to make this work.
I think YouTube existed in 2005.
Well, I sure didn't go to it. This is why it's a confession, Chris, not a
Yeah.
reflection.
Here's another throttling story. In the same year, 2014, Netflix then decided to throttle their own speeds because they wanted to oppose proposed changes to net neutrality rules that would have given preferred websites the option to pay telecommunication companies for a guaranteed fast lane, which was essentially what they were already doing with Comcast, from what I just read out loud, right? So they essentially were like, well, we don't want to have to keep paying off Comcast like this mafia.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than do that, we're going to just fuck over all our customers until until the net neutrality rules bend the way we want them to.
So the ins and outs of what we're talking about are so detailed. There's so much going on here, right?
Yeah.
The thing that we should take from this, perhaps, is that the company Netflix, which is a big part of how I think you should leave, came to be,
Hmm.
was in the midst of show business trying to figure out what the hell this technology was and how this was going to work almost 10 years beforehand.
Oh, longer than that, I would think. Yeah.
I'm talking about when we get into this like throttling and trying to work
Uh,
around what's
yeah.
going on, like the streaming before the wars began, right, was just amazing. It was a novelty. I just looked up YouTube. YouTube launched in February of 2005.
Okay. I guess what I find fascinating about this is that we can sit around and do what you and I do and talk about this TV show and how much we love it and um, pull apart like what makes the comedy work and how they wrote it and how they make the show and who they included in it. But at the end of the day, you can't watch it if these mega corporations aren't getting exactly what they want out of it,
Mm.
right? Like even if you're paying them money to watch it, sometimes you don't have access to the thing that you're paying for.
Yeah, if you're not using the Amazon video service from the Amazon web servers on your Amazon TV with your Amazon Fire Stick.
Which it sounds like a joke that Charlie's making right now, but that's one of the other factoids is that
Mm-hmm.
Netflix is hosted on AWS. So ironically, their competitor hosts their platform. That is another like weird business to business thing, it's like, well, why doesn't Amazon just stop hosting their content?
Well, because there's a lot of money involved in
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, there's probably more money in hosting Netflix than there is in making that Lord of the Rings TV show that they did. Um,
Now, since we're talking about Netflix making shows,
yeah.
let's talk about this thing that started happening the year before I Think You Should Leave launched in 2019.
Hmm.
Netflix in 2018, according to Variety Insight, produced a total of 240 new original shows and movies. In 2019, it produced 371 new original shows and movies, which was a figure, quote, greater than the number of original series that the entire US TV industry released in 2005. Now, that is like some weird baseball statistic where it's like, this is the first time since 1995 that a runner
Yeah.
with a three, whatever.
But it does
Um,
give us some perspective on what we were talking about earlier, right? That like they just continue to like up the ante on more and more content. So I just did a quick calculator. So in 2019, that meant that every week on Netflix there were 7 new shows and movies.
yeah. And it's crazy to think that there was a time when what Netflix was was a library of streaming content that had been produced by other studios that was suddenly available because of your internet connection, not because you could go get a DVD or buy a DVD or, I don't know, have a cable subscription.
Hmm.
Netflix started the cord cutting
Yeah.
and then was almost immediately captured by the cord.
Well, it's kind of fascinating. So I went and visited my aunt and uncle a couple weeks ago, and they watch a lot of cable TV, and they have everything back through Comcast. And they were telling me out of nowhere, my uncle is like, "Hey, we saw that show Wednesday, and we thought it was something that you would like." And I didn't say anything. And I was like, "Oh, you have Netflix?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's just built right into Comcast." And I don't, I've cut the cord like 20 years ago, so
Yeah.
I don't know how any of this stuff works. But yeah, apparently, like, you don't even have to like have a Roku stick or anything like an Xbox with the Netflix app on it or anything like that to just watch Netflix. You can watch it through your cable box now,
Mm.
and they pay for it as part of your cable subscription.
So, total sidebar, but
Yeah.
related. I wanted to play the Thanksgiving Macy's Day Parade coverage for my kids on Thanksgiving Day.
Okay.
About an hour and 15 minutes after I started trying to do that,
Yeah.
I finally just said to my wife, I don't know. And she said, I'm just going to subscribe to the service and
It
we'll get
wasn't
it.
on YouTube?
I don't even know anymore. At a certain point, I found something on YouTube that was Macy's Day Parade live, but then I think somewhere in parentheses it said pre-parade coverage or something. Because then what we were doing was we were watching 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. again at 10 o'clock.
Right.
Like I don't even
Yeah.
know, but I felt that kind of, well, it was a lot like measles. I thought this was handled. I thought we didn't have to worry
Yeah.
about this. I thought that I could just turn on broadcast television even if I didn't have a cable box.
I mean,
But
I would have
no,
assumed that too.
nope.
Well, that's why I said YouTube is that like most major networks stream events like that on their YouTube channel now. For like this was my ex-wife's decision, but for like big events like that that we wanted to watch on TV live as they were happening, I think it was the Olympics that prompted this.
Yeah.
She bought a digital antenna, which is like, I don't know, $10. So you can still plug a digital antenna into the back of your TV and get like the 3 or 4 channels that are still on that.
Can you plug a digital antenna into the back of your digital projector that you nailed to the ceiling?
Dude, I don't know.
Neither do I.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, look at you with a fancy projector.
Oh my God, shut the fuck up. Okay. So Netflix's budget allocated to production has increased every year. It was 13.6 billion with a B in 2021. It's projected to be 18.9 billion with a B by the end of 2025.
That's bigger than the economies of some third world countries.
I mean, that's always going to be true, dude.
Yeah.
As of August 2022, original productions made up 50% of Netflix overall library in the United States. So I think they just want to buy some good stuff from Warner Brothers.
I mean, that is, I'm about to say something very similar to what you said about my SNL statement. This is, everybody says this, especially everybody our age. I see it on social media all the time. But every time I read these statistics, I think, how about you cut that number in half? You use the leftover funding to make quality content that people want to watch. You actually promote it, and you pay the people who work on it a livable wage.
Now, I'm not kidding around. I'm not making a joke about what you said, even though it's going to sound a little bit like it.
Yeah,
I mean, what about all the people whose jobs it is to make crap?
I don't know. That's a
There's a
good point.
lot of
Yeah.
jobs in here, right? There's a
But
lot
a
of
lot of
people.
jobs that don't pay well.
Well, no
I
shit.
know because I used to be one part
Yeah.
of those companies that made crap.
we got a lot of people scrabbling to make a living. You
Yeah,
know, didn't you send me something recently that proposed that the new poverty line is something like $100,000
I did. Yeah.
because it's about how much of a percent of your income you have to pay for food and lodging and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact statistics, but it was really fascinating. If you can dig it up and include it in the show notes, that people might want to read it.
I can find it. Yeah.
Um, yeah, essentially it was saying that the way in which the federal government calculates the cost of living for the poverty line is incorrect, and that there's a multitude of
Outdated.
factors. Yeah. Yes, outdated. And they did very compelling quantitative analysis of what the actual numbers should be. And yeah, I think it was like 100,000, maybe even $120,000 a year was what the poverty line should actually be.
And that that's crazy, but also should put a lot of people's economic anxiety into perspective.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
And also, if suddenly we stopped making all of that crap to fill up Netflix, a lot of people would be out of a job. I guess they're going to be out of a job anyway. But there's an industry going here, Chris, and you are trying to take food out of the mouths of the one cat that these people own in their one bedroom apartment.
I am sure that if this was a different point during the day, I would be able to rationally argue against what you're saying right now, but I can't muster it up right now. So I will just go along and say, yes, you're right. You're
Oh
right.
man,
All of those people should starve to death and their
it is
cats too.
literally no fun if you just say yes to a thing that I'm talking out of my ass about.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously disagree with you, but I don't understand the economics of it enough to justify paying a few people better wages and letting the other people go find work somewhere else.
Yeah, and again, that's a real thing.
It
I'm
is,
sort of
yeah.
joking, but also kidding on the square. There's a lot of jobs in there. And if you contract this particular amount of money, you
Yeah.
will be cutting jobs. And you know that once somebody has something, it's much harder to take it away.
Let me throw something else at you, and then we'll get back to I think you should leave. You know what they're going to do anyways? They're going
Fire
to,
all those people.
yeah, and replace them with AI because AI can make crap TV pretty much just as well as humans can at this point.
Oh, God.
And I'm not saying that as it like I'm in favor of AI. I'm saying that's what the people counting beans at Netflix are thinking right now.
Chris, I think you should leave.
Charlie, do you know what the people at Corncob Podcasting told me?
Is that the company that doesn't exist that runs this podcast?
Yeah, there are corporate overlords.
Yeah.
They said no more Patreon.
What?
They
No, they
said
didn't.
you can't, no. They were like, you cannot collect $1 a month from your listeners. You need to be charging them more. That's what Corncob Podcasting said.
I forgot that we have a whole back catalog of Patreon benefits, stuff like blooper reels and mini-sodes, 4 years of them, I think. And then all
Hmm.
those Super King contexts. I ask you this sometimes, Chris, and you never answer me in a way that I like. So I'm going to ask you again. Do you want to keep doing Super King contexts?
Only if you and the listeners can afford to pay me the poverty line in America
Uh,
as a salary will I then start doing Super King contexts.
Here's what I wonder. Have we already talked about that in this episode, or is this a spoiler?
Charlie, it doesn't matter. Just tell them about Patreon.
Patreon.com/supercontext. Come on over, tell us something, give us some money. And we're back. Chris, I want to start doing something after the break.
Hmm.
Uh, I want to say, what have we learned so far?
Oh, this is good for AI SEO.
Fuck you. Never mind. I don't want to do it. No. So I think you should leave with Tim Robinson is a sketch show produced by Netflix during their glut of original content years,
Yeah.
uh, helmed by a pair of Saturday Night Live writers, one of whom was a performer. And in a lot of ways, what they were doing was the stuff that didn't work for SNL, not the stuff that was
Mhm.
too good or too weird, just the stuff that wasn't working for Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who know comedy dug it so that they could then be part of it. A lot of
Mhm.
performers, um, and I think that's it for kind of what we've built up to.
Well, one of the things I wanted to mention, similar to the line of reasoning that you just dropped, is that in addition to the show, they apparently did a live tour
Oh,
as well
nice.
just last year. Um, so this is, Netflix never reveals their numbers,
Yeah.
but we know that it was successful enough that they were able to put together a big successful live tour of the show.
After the show was done, because that's what I forgot to say. 3 seasons and 3 seasons only.
No, I don't think that's true necessarily. My understanding is that there's potential for them to do more. They're just not because they're doing the chair company and other stuff right now.
Oh, you think they'll come back to it?
I I don't know. I guess it
No, no,
depends on how
I know
much
you
money
don't know.
Netflix offer them.
You haven't
Yeah.
gotten anything back from Irony Point. You have no idea what's going
It's true. Yeah. I mean, I called, they didn't pick up. Um,
on.
The live tour featured unaired sketches and extended versions of the sketches, and I believe like they performed sketches live on
Yeah.
stage, and then like various performers, guest performers showed up, um, which sounds cool. Yeah, I didn't catch it, but I would have been interested in seeing that.
So here's something I want to ask you.
Mm.
Can you like when did it become the live tour was an essential part of the production of things?
I don't know necessarily, but I think sketch comedy itself lends itself to that more. I don't remember how long, but like the Kids in the Hall have been doing live tours
Totally.
for a long time
But I'm
now.
also thinking about how
And
Radiolab did a live tour, and This American Life does a live tour, and Letterkenny and Shorzy did live
yeah, I
tours,
was
and
actually just to mention that about to mention that because a friend of mine went to the Shoresy hockey thing last weekend.
oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
sidebar, how to go.
I don't know. They just told me they were going. Yeah.
I think you should call them right now.
You should go yourself. Take your kids. Um,
My kids don't like hockey.
I'm sure they love Shorzy. Uh, but I don't know. Like, I think, okay, here's another non-research
Yeah, go for
hot
it.
take. This episode's full of hot takes. My assumption would be that similar to music, that a lot of content creation nowadays requires live performances in order to, um, make a decent salary off of the thing.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot less money scraped off the top by production companies if you do a live tour.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I know because like when I was on Stuff to Blow Your Mind, we did live shows. We didn't, we didn't make any money off the live shows, but we were invited to do live shows. Yeah, and that was like something that was encouraged, and I haven't been on that show for I don't know 7 or 8 years. And I think that's a practice that a lot of podcasts that are fairly successful do now. I mean, you even did it with your
Yeah,
radio show.
yeah, but I'm just saying, like it's a fairly new thing. It made sense with somebody like a sketch group, or
Yeah.
obviously bands would make an album
Yeah.
and would tour, but it doesn't make me blink until I reflect on it that this show did a live tour with no new season in production and no
Oh,
expectation of a new season in production.
yeah. I mean, I think it is, regardless of whether my theory is right or not, I think like the changing nature of the economics of entertainment is why you're probably seeing more of a prevalence of it
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Just wanted to mark it before we moved on to consumption.
Yeah. So let's talk about reviews and critical acclaim. So our buddies at Rotten Tomatoes, this show got a 96%, 100% for the second season, and another 96% for the third season. That's
Those are
a,
high numbers.
yeah, really high for Rotten Tomatoes. And the Metacritic 72, 87, and 82 for the three seasons respectively,
And
which
how
again,
interesting that it's a triangle, but lower on the first season than the third season, despite the Rotten Tomatoes scores being pretty much the same.
I wonder if that is because people didn't necessarily go back and reappraise it and plug in.
Ah, yeah.
One of the articles that is referenced for our research in this episode, the whole premise of the article, it might have been Wired. Um, the whole premise of the article was we reviewed this show for its first season and we said it wasn't very good and we were wrong.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's right. Like, that's literally the thesis of
yeah,
the article is that it has now come to my attention that I got this show wrong when it came
yeah.
out.
Yeah. So, maybe there's a number of actual viewers who sort of felt the same way. Or maybe the second season is just better than the first and third. I don't know. I mean, the second season is what drew me in for
Yeah.
sure.
But wasn't it also the timing? This is why now I'm leaning into it. Wasn't it the timing that made it possible for you to get into the show?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, I think I would have appreciated this stuff regardless of COVID nightmare. But yeah, it definitely resonated with me more
Yeah.
because of the context.
And you had a lot more time to sift and respond to people's recommendations or to notice that there was this hot dog gif on all of your social media.
I don't know. Did I? Did I have more time? It didn't feel like it. Did you?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. Just because, a lot of my life before COVID was taken up by the preparations for physically going from one place to another with three children
Right, because they're going to soccer games and camps and stuff like that.
and
Yeah,
school
yeah,
and with us on a groceries trip and that kind of thing.
yeah.
And getting locked down meant a lot of the cognitive load of the logistics of a household eased.
Mm.
The emotional load and the cognitive load of, trying to navigate that time much higher, obviously. But at the end of the day, like if I hadn't done the laundry, it didn't matter because I didn't have to put clothes on the next day to go to work.
Uh-huh. Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, we didn't have to think about how we're going to get so and so to that thing and so to that thing. You know,
I do understand what you're saying. I will say, and I think that this is speaks to my personality. I never, as far as I can remember, worked in my pajamas during all of that. And I heard so many people talk about how great it was that they could work in their pajamas.
and you're like, no
And
way.
I was like, no, every morning I got up and I made the bed and I put my clothes on because the ritual of it helped me feel
Yeah,
grounded.
that makes total sense.
Um,
I did not.
yeah, well, I mean, and here we are. This show brought us together in crisis.
Let's talk about some reviews from the New York Times Magazine. Sam Anderson wrote, over its first two seasons, I Think You Should Leave inspired a giddy and devoted following that spread memes and merch across the internet. Even if you've never seen an episode, you have probably encountered stray images from the show in the daily slush of content we all drink from our screens. Gross. You may have seen Robinson on Instagram grinning in a hot dog costume. That is the one that I'm fixated on. That's the one that clicked for me. The picture of the guy in the hot dog costume saying, "Hey, we're all trying to figure out who did this," when this is a hot dog car crashing into a store.
There is spoilers. There's a fun up and coming tidbit about that specific meme.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's probably, for all of our listeners, there's probably at least one thing that they've seen more than once that made no sense that came from this show.
I've told you about this before. After I got into the show, I started following an Instagram account that is called I Think You Should Peaks, and it is
That's
Twin
right.
Peaks and I think you should leave mashups where
Yeah.
either it's either a still from Twin Peaks with an I think you should leave quote or the other way around, and they somehow perfectly match. Um, and that's just like one example of probably a million, little uh social media accounts or Reddit boards or whatever, yeah, that were sprung out of the success of this show.
Nice.
So accolades, this is something I didn't really realize as I was watching it. It won a lot of awards. It won, let's see, Writers Guild of America awards, Hollywood Critics Association, Primetime Emmys, another Television Critics Association, won an Emmy again. So, I mean, over the course of the 5 years that these three seasons were spread across, like it was not only successful with comedians, but it was successful with critics as well.
Yeah. And the industry itself.
Yeah, there seemed to be this sort of resounding appreciation for Tim Robinson, which probably I would hope would be rewarding after being on SNL and feeling like nobody understood what you're doing.
Yeah. Hey, so you're my sponsor in this particular addiction I have.
Okay.
So I'm going to tell you about,
You read bad reviews of it?
you know it,
Uh-huh.
baby.
Oh,
I
tell
went
me
to
what
the
they said.
IMDb and I clicked on the 1 star reviews of I think you should leave.
Oh yeah, what did they
And
say?
the reason, well, let it play out.
Okay.
And the reason I did that is because this is objectively a well regarded show.
Yeah, according to the stats,
The
yeah.
audience loves it. The industry awards it. Um, the media appreciates it. But also, it is quite fun to read review after review after review on a internet platform. People saying this is the most unfunny thing I've ever seen. I don't understand why anybody likes this. None of this makes sense. These messages are awful. That was a really good one. I like that one a lot. Um, it does force people into a place to hate it if they do not get it, which I find pretty compelling.
I had a friend who, whenever, this is years and years and years ago, but whenever something like this comedically would
Mhm.
pop up in our conversations or somebody would share it with them, they would say, I don't get it. It's just random. And like the word random was used as like a sort of catch-all dismissal for comedy that wasn't um that didn't like have a setup and a punchline
Yeah.
in the like the traditional way that like most people have come to expect their comedy fed to
Yeah.
them.
There's no humor here. There's no punchlines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just random. Just these things don't make sense that they're bringing up. And I suspect that is part of what's going on here.
I totally understand your point. It also feels like a failure to watch the show. Now, I know that there's some sketches that are bizarre. There's a sketch where a guy who appreciates motorcycles turns out to be from an alien invasion force that likes motorcycles.
Hmm.
Okay. But so much of this show is so grounded in reality. You know, the actors that they cast are real people, real looking people. You know, there's a diversity of age, ethnicity, body type, vibe, or whatever you want to call it. There are not even, I don't know how to say this right without sounding like a dickhead. So I'm going to kind of fumble my way through it. It does not make a point to say, hey, look, this non heteronormative, non mainstream America fact about a person isn't important. It's just part of the sketch.
Yeah, this is almost like you're setting us up for a perfect segue into our next section.
It's almost like I read the notes before we did the podcast.
Yeah.
But let me
Uh,
finish my thought.
okay.
And that reality makes even kind of lunatic stuff make sense to me.
Yes. Yeah.
The world that I think you should leave posits still embraces the fact that there are people who do not understand why this person is taking it so seriously that the
Hmm.
door opens both ways, or does not know why this
Yeah.
person is attacking the idea that they have presented, or is confused why this person would start screaming on an airplane, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
It's not random. Its surreal elements are encased in a really rigorously defined real world.
Yeah, that when I watched it the first time, I thought to myself, this is clearly intentional. Like they clearly had a conversation where they said, there's going to be a lot of background actors in these sketches, but we want to fill this world out with people that feel real rather
Yeah.
than just like an ensemble of folks that they pull off a Craigslist or whatever, you know?
I think there might be a little bit of that Midwestern real thing happening here, where
Hmm.
instead of trying to have the LA or New York look to everyone,
Hmm.
I'm told that people who act professionally often starve themselves in order to look like a regular person.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that there's a variety of body types that reflects what the real world looks like rather than what
Yeah.
entertainment tells us the real world looks
A
like.
variety of
Yes.
faces, a variety of fashion, a variety of affect.
I think that is true too, but I was also struck by um, that how authentically and naturally this show inserted background actors of different ethnicities, genders, ages, and bodies, and did so in a way that didn't feel like a United Colors of Benetton ad. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it's not crafted for you to pay attention to any diversity that's being posited. It's the lived in aspect. It's the idea that,
Yeah.
look, it's the world. This
This
is
is
how
the
it
world.
looks.
And there's never a point in the show, at least that I can remember, where anybody comments on that, right? Where anybody's like, uh, any of the characters, I mean,
There's
like,
no winking to the
y-
camera or sort
yeah,
of framing that makes you say, oh, they're not making a big deal out of
they're
this.
not self-conscious about it. Yeah. Um, and I thought that I thought for sure there would be an academic article about this, but I couldn't find anything.
Can I tell you something, Chris?
Yeah.
I made a point not to look for any academic articles this time around.
Oh, um,
I didn't go near JSTOR once.
I did, and but my library has less access than yours, so maybe there's deeper cuts that I wasn't able to find.
It's hilarious to me that you sent me a text that said, hey, can you get to this article?
Yeah.
And when I went to it and got it and sent it to you, you said that was fast.
Well, I realized afterward that you are just able to log directly into the site, right? With your because it was wired. It was a
Yeah.
wired article.
That's not even logging into the site. I'm just authorized because of the water I swim in here.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. Um, and I was thinking you were going to have to do what I do, which is go to JSTOR or
Yeah, no,
whatever,
no, no.
WorldCat, and type in Wired Magazine and then type in the article title.
The longest part of that process for me was figuring out how to save a PDF off my phone to then text
That
you.
that was impressive as well that you were able to text me a PDF,
I
man.
am such an old fart, man. It's sad. I need to learn how
Well,
technology works.
as an old fart, you would be portrayed in this
That's
show.
right. There are
Um,
definitely people who look like me in the background. So, from that Wired article, Peter Rubin gives us language for what we're talking about here.
Yeah, he noticed this as well and said, "I think You Should Leave is remarkable for how little race and sexuality matter. It's more broadly inclusive than any sketch show ever. Yet the only difference the show ever harps on is insecurity." And then
Rough.
somehow, the Wired article was able to locate a viewer of the show. Oh, I know why, because this guy apparently runs a Twitter fan account for the show. His name is John, and he lives in New York. And John uh, explains that there's a sketch on the show where Robinson is married to a man, but there's no point within the sketch where that is like um, unusual or remarked upon, or there's any kind of acknowledgement of the inclusivity. It just is.
Yeah, this couple just has to figure out how to navigate the fact that they're late.
Yeah,
And one of them says, let's say the babysitter was late. And the other says, awesome. And then fails to follow through on that
right.
simple duplicity. And it doesn't matter that they're two men. And it doesn't matter that they're two men who have kids that the babysitter has to take care of. That's just their life. And the sketch is about how one of them cannot let go of extrapolating and elaborating the lie until, I mean, it gets to a really okay. I feel I feel like I'm getting hives just thinking about it.
Well, John, who runs this fan account, says, I'm a gay man. And when the butt of the joke, or even a tiny fraction of the joke, wasn't the fact that they were gay, it made me feel differently. I can laugh at gay jokes, I can laugh at racial jokes or political jokes, but to completely pull those factors out of your show deliberately and say that this show and its insanity are going to be completely universal, that is new.
This is going back to I did not think about this show in terms of psychological safety, but you
Hmm.
said I felt seen when you watched it. I think someone else in another article said I felt solidarity because, oh,
Mm-hmm.
there's another person like me. It's okay to have these kind of feelings. This was not something I expected to pull out of trying to understand. I think you should leave, but it transcends. I'm gonna write the blurb copy. It transcends petty differences to find what makes us
Mm-hmm.
all human.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting, right? That the universality is well, we'll talk about this further down the line, but anxiety and embarrassment. And makes me wonder then about all those people who left those one-star reviews that you said that they could not see
Leave them
themselves there.
alone.
Yeah.
It's not washed out though. That's the other thing is that those differences are not remarked upon. They don't congratulate themselves on showing you gay characters or black
Hmm.
characters or whomever.
Yeah.
And they also don't then like, what do you call it? They don't dumb it down or even it out. Uh, Sam Anderson from New York Times Magazine, we were reading some from that article earlier. He writes Robinson's comedy is, as my wife has put it, very male. There's a lot of yelling and nasty language and juvenile behavior. There are colorful synonyms for poop, like mud pie and absolute paint job. I do like that second one. When a man's ego is threatened, the whole universe seems to hang in the balance. But it would be a mistake to confuse Robinson's comedy with the usual very male comedy. The archetypal bad boy, swinging his it around, railing against PC culture and his nagging wife, preaching that the rules are stupid, that society is a scam and a cage, that we should follow our desires and never negotiate and certainly never apologize. So Anderson is making a point to say gender exists and gender differences that we point out exist, but somehow they are not the kind of self justifying gender differences.
Yeah, I mean, uh, I may be stepping into deep water here, but isn't that what inclusivity is? Like that the differences between genders are worth celebrating,
Oh, there you
not
go. That's nicely
not
done. Yeah.
complaining about. And that's the difference here, right? Is that like essentially what he's saying is Robinson is like worlds away from Joe Rogan, right? They're not even in the same universe,
Okay, now you're in deep water.
but they're still male in the sense that like there are Robinson has t- typical male qualities in his sense of humor.
Yeah, it's not the inclusivity does not uh, shave off or smooth out differences.
Yeah,
It even kind of highlights them in possibly a useful way.
but you can still laugh at and with those differences regardless of what your identity is.
Yeah. Um, Along with all of that, we also have a very specific part of representation and identity. Patti Harrison, who we've mentioned several times, is a trans woman. And
Yeah.
she said, uh, well, overall, she is sort of understood as pushing back against the idea of, I am transgender, I am a comedian, like
Hmm.
trying to kind of move that out of the understanding. In a lot of ways, like we shouldn't say a female comedian, right? It should be
Yeah.
comedians.
Hmm.
She even says, I like to bait and switch people who think they're going to get to pat themselves on the back for seeing a trans comedian by trying to be repulsive. Uh, this reminds me of way back when There's Something About Mary.
Mm.
There's a actor who uses a wheelchair in most of the Farrelly brothers movies.
I remember this. Yeah.
And he says he wants his part to always be a reprehensible person, to
Hmm.
push back against
Hmm.
any of the false nobility of the disabled.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think like there should be uh diversity in our villains too.
Yeah.
Um, there was a key point in an interview with Robinson and Kanan that made me understand this process and how they get there. And this surprised me, honestly, based on the premise of the show. For every sketch, they audition every single role, even if they write that role specifically for Tim Robinson to play. So, like for instance, some of the sketches where he's the straight man, we can assume that he was initially supposed to be the crazy one, right? So the
Right.
focus group sketch is a good example. But then they auditioned for all the roles in that scene, and one other person ends up being funnier than him in that role.
Oh, you know what? Now that you say that, I think of like the plane sketch in which Will Forte is the I think you should leave person.
Yeah.
Of course, that could have been Tim Robinson.
It could have been. Yeah. I mean, although Will Forte is perfect
Well,
for
yeah,
that as
he
well.
was right,
Yeah.
but he's not part of the
Yeah.
troupe. It's not like he's always going to be there.
No.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Um, or another one. What's I don't remember what this sketch is called, but the sketch where there's like three alumni of a university having dinner with their professor, and the professor is like an older black man he's the crazy one, like he won't stop stealing food off of everybody's plates. And my understanding was that guy was just an extra who was there that day, and like
And made it work.
yeah, like they were like, oh, this guy, it's funnier with this guy.
Nice. Yeah, I like that a lot.
There's not much for us to talk about regulation wise, but I do think it's worth, revisiting this idea that both Kanan and Robinson worked on SNL, and the things that they pitched for that platform were rejected for numerous reasons, right? But that is regulation, I think. Like, that's a mainstream platform. There's certain things you can or cannot say. There's certain limits to humor that can't be pushed on there. But they succeeded on this show where they
Yeah.
couldn't on SNL.
Yeah. So like it's not literally censorship. It's not even close.
No.
But it is they they were good enough on one format,
Yeah.
but they were able to craft exactly what they needed on in another venue.
I do have a theory though, back to my SNL subjective opinion, that the folks behind SNL, probably after seeing the success of this, realize that they need to push a little bit outside of their comfort zone. I don't know how much you've seen of Sarah Sherman on that show.
I've
She
not seen any Saturday Night Live, and I don't think I will. Not like haha because I won't.
yeah.
I just That's not a thing that's going to happen.
My point, though, is that Sarah Sherman is a stand-up comedian who goes by the name Sarah Squirm, and she really leans into body horror as her
Oh,
brand of
okay.
comedy. And that she made a name for herself doing that kind of thing on Instagram. And they have incorporated that into some of her SNL sketches
Interesting.
in ways that I was like, I would never have thought that they would do this. Like, there was a sketch where like somebody had, it might have been her, had, they were growing meatballs on their skin, and the meatballs had faces, and the faces were cast members.
Please stop.
Yeah, but you wouldn't think like, you know what I mean? That's more of an I
Yeah.
think you should leave premise
Yeah.
than a so anyways, again, like just going back to like thinking about the whole overall picture of like the development of comedy and the production environment in which it's distributed in, I think social media, I think Netflix, all of these various tech things have come together to kind of push this random kind of sense of humor further up the chain than it might have been before.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't think I watch or will watch SNL anymore because the stuff that I want to connect to is almost always being done in a different venue that I can access in a way I prefer. And SNL is not my conduit to comedy.
Hmm.
I think that I am done finding out about stuff on that kind of television. And I'm much more ready to get like a text from you or my brother
Uh-huh.
or encounter a video and go that way.
Yeah. So I think let me see if I can reverse engineer what you're saying. SNL is uh like the gateway drug to comedy for a lot of people.
I think so,
It's sort of
yeah.
like training wheels. And
I mean,
you're saying like
you've
I
got a
don't
very
need
famous musical guest. You know,
yeah.
you've got a history. You've got names. People are delighted when Jimmy Fallon and Harry Styles appear in a sketch, and those
Yeah.
are high level celebrities. And I'm out of that game now.
I think that I should do what you're doing because I'm 90% of the time disappointed when I watch SNL. But I don't know. It's maybe it's the ritual of it. Like going back to that again.
Oh,
Like
there's
I
got to be
like
that.
the
Yeah,
ritual of
yeah.
it, but I'm often disappointed by what I see. Okay, let's stop talking about SNL. We'll go back to this show. Um, I want to talk about the themes surrounding the show, and a lot of them we've dabbled into already. I think there's a couple buckets that we're going to find here. One is cringe comedy, which I'm not in love with that term, and maybe we'll get into that. And then there's a lot in here of people talking about that the reason why they identified with the show is because they are anxious people,
Yeah.
meaning that they suffer from general anxiety disorder, and that they again saw themselves in this show. And I will say, like, I suffer from that. Like
Yeah.
I take medical prescription for that. Um, that wasn't the first thing that I thought about it though. That why I identified with it.
Yeah. And we should be very specific about this. I mean, there's not a lot of sketch comedy shows that have a tone delivered in the title, almost
Yeah.
a thesis statement delivered in the title.
Yeah.
The things that happen in these sketches are random, are out of control, are
Hmm.
not in any way relatable in terms of like, uh, have you ever been in a retail store when a car crashed through the
Yeah.
front display window and then had a discussion with the driver who was pretending they hadn't driven the car?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you haven't. Don't say
Oh
yeah to
yeah,
me.
I do that all the time. Yeah. Yeah, I know people who drive hot dog cars.
And yet, that attempt to bluff your way out of the responsibility for what you've done when it is obvious that you are not succeeding
Yeah.
That seems universal.
Yeah, and so I think this is a point where I want to say that there's maybe two paths to enjoy this show. There's the one that I came in on, which is like seeing somebody do that reminds me of my everyday experience. Not in that I am the one
Right.
who's
You're
trying
hot
to.
dog guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm the person who's like, yeah, but it's very obvious that it's you.
Oh, okay.
Um, Whereas, and I think you are on the other side of this, where you see hot dog guy and you're like, I could see myself doing that.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel very
yeah.
vulnerable to the doubling, tripling, and quadrupling down on the mistake I've made is me and should be accepted. And also, it wasn't a problem anyway.
And I'm gonna say this and try not to sound too self-congratulatory about it, but I think a big part of me growing into adulthood has been trying to accept as much as possible when I've made a mistake or when I'm wrong about something
Yeah.
or I think I know something and I don't actually know what I'm talking about and somebody calls me out on my shit. Um and so that's why that part doesn't click for me, I think, is that because I see that and I'm just like, well, but it's so easy to just say I don't know. I can trace the moment that this goes back to. It goes back to when I first was teaching.
Oh, there you
Because
go.
one of my professors who taught the pedagogy class that I was in said, All you have to do is be authentic
Yeah.
and just say it's okay to say I don't know the answer to that, but how about I go look it up afterwards and we can talk about it at another time."
I am delighted you brought that up because that is my experience teaching also. Both being in the classroom and finding yourself in a place where, oh, I don't have a ready made answer for you. Let's talk it through. Here's why I don't know that. Here's how I can find it out. Maybe we can find it out right now together. Or making an embarrassing mistake. Like one time I started a lecture, which has beats in it. It's not, I don't memorize it word for word, but the example I bring up and then the point I make, it's pretty well regimented. One time I brought up the example and I made the wrong point. I brought up the example about structure, but I made the point about format. And then I was like, oh my gosh, do you know what, everybody? I just had a weird short circuit in my brain. I started one example and I gave you the wrong end of that example. I feel very silly. Let's start again on that one, shall we? And it worked. I mean, somebody even laughed at me and it was okay.
Hmm.
But the equivalent of any of that in my, say, parenting or, handling my domestic life, oh, I get very Tim Robinson about it.
Mm. I Yeah, I mean, I can see that not being a parent, I can still see that. But I guess in my daily life, when I encounter people who it's clear that that's what they're doing, that they're doubling down on something when they know they're wrong, it it feels like so in some ways like a core problem to our society. Like a lot of our problems as a society come from that central premise of like if we could all just be okay with being wrong and still having self-confidence.
Yeah.
But there's something about the way that we teach confidence, specifically in America, I'm thinking that it's like you can never be wrong about it. It's the Donald Trump, actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I hate saying that name out loud, but everything his position on everything, which my understanding is that like he got from Roy Cohn, is never under any circumstances admit that you've ever been wrong or you've made a mistake.
Yeah.
And
That's an actual principle of business
yeah,
negotiation and brand identity for Donald Trump.
and we see where that has gotten us,
Yeah.
both politically and personally. Um,
There is okay, so Peter Rubin, who wrote the Wired article that we've mentioned, he described differently what we're talking about in a way that actually is sort of almost celebratory, almost
mhm,
we can recognize it and maybe change it. He wrote, Of its 29 sketches, speaking of the first season only, of its 29 sketches, nearly every one hinges on a character who is gloriously, spectacularly wrong, yet refuses to budge lest they be humiliated by copping to their own wrongness. In a way, in that is the moral imperative outward to the witnesses to the wrongness to not humiliate the person when
Mm.
they admit their own wrongness.
So, Charlie, as you know, I have dabbled in the world of online dating this year,
I do know about that.
and I won't go too far into that. But one of the things that I have learned through this process, both through what people post on their profiles and what women tell me on dates, is that when they see a person who is able to do the opposite and is able to cop to their wrongness and not be humiliated by it, they find that more attractive, more sexy than the opposite.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I hear you. Uh, Much like most of my arguments about how we should live in the world, what if the right answer is not to be more attractive?
So, what would be the alternative then in this scenario?
I am thinking that there is a way that the world works, or the way that our particular American culture works,
Yeah.
where if you're wrong and I can call you out, then I win and you don't matter.
I mean, I think in a way that is one of the central premises of this show that we've been doing for many years, although facetiously, right? That you and
God, I
I
hope so.
kind
Yeah.
of joke about that. But yeah, yeah, that is especially in nerd culture and especially in like any kind of like navel gazing about entertainment. That is like a central tenet. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I don't know though that that's necessarily an attractive quality, and I'm not just saying like attractive sexually. I mean attractive in the sense of like actually winning an argument and winning over an audience. You know what I mean?
I hear you. I think maybe also what I am kind of going after is people have enjoyed watching this. They have
Yeah.
taken pleasure from it.
You mean the
If
TV show?
Yeah, the TV show. But also what does that mean? Does that mean that they should be able to take pleasure in watching someone do that in reality?
Mm,
Or is this like the emotional muscle workout of being able to handle it by watching it with no stakes on a show? Is
hmm.
I guess what I'm circling here, and in no way am I trying to argue that you ought to one way or the other, but the show can work as a empathizing, like, oh my gosh, that's how I am sometimes,
Hmm.
and I can let go of that. I don't have to go to this squirming, screaming place when I'm wrong. But can't it also be recognizing that when someone is doing that, you can feel affection for them
Yes,
and you can give them grace?
I agree with you. And I think what you just said out loud is the lesson that I should take away from the episode that we're recording is that like yes, in addition to recognizing this, I should also recognize that the person who is melting down
Yeah.
also needs sympathy.
And not to harp on it, but I think that there might be an over reliance on wondering what will make someone more attractive in terms of what is the right thing to do or how should one handle the world.
I see what you're saying, but I'm just saying this from the simple perspective of two people who are desperately searching for love and coming together and saying to one another, "This is what I need."
Yeah, I got you. I got you. Fair play. Fair play. All right, let's go back to the Chilton article. There's some more, and Chilton actually hits on this moment now. So here's from the article. Robinson is very much a creature of the modern world whose sensibility, a sort of comic inferno of anger, confusion, and embarrassment, speaks directly to a Trump era America. Historically, the cutting edges of comedy, the new frontiers, have been found in the act of simply going further, pushing formal boundaries. It is not hard to trace a direct line from the radical randomness of Monty Python's Flying Circus through to the pinball online era surrealism of Tim and Eric, for example. But we now live in an era where the most formal boundaries have seemingly been pushed to their limit in almost every conceivable way, whether that's absurdity, explicitness of content, or metatextuality. The genius of I Think You Should Leave then comes not from its form, but its content. And its content is quite unlike anything that preceded it. Robinson's work upends one of the most fundamental dynamics of narrative comedy, that of the straight man and comic foil. Okay,
Yeah, so that gets in. We've
that's the
been
stuff.
talking about this, but I think without saying it that way, right? That like there is a dynamic in almost every sketch between a straight man and the person melting down, as we've been saying it. Except for there are those sketches where there's no one except for Tim Robinson as the melting down person, right? Like I'm thinking of the Corncob TV coffin flop one where it's just him screaming at you, the viewer.
The one that comes to my mind is the guy who is scared by his neighbor because he sends a pig into his house,
Yes.
and for one moment he thought that all the rules he'd learned of life were wrong.
Yep. Yeah. I thought of that one earlier. You were talking about something else related to this show, and I thought of that one because that is a perfect example of a scenario that most people would see and be like, I don't understand this.
Yeah,
This is random. Where did this come from?
that is the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen sometimes.
Because the gag is that the pig is wearing a Richard Nixon mask for some reason,
Yeah.
but Tim Robinson's character doesn't see it that way. His eyes perceive it as like this weird creature crawling around on all fours. On
So he explains to you, the
Yeah,
viewer, what he went through, what he believed, and he does it in this kind of uh, almost Philip K. Dick
yeah,
transposed timeline narrative. Anyway, uh, what Chilton is putting out is the idea that instead of an insane person and a straight man or straight woman doing the kind of reflection and judgment upon, that sometimes those are collapsed, sometimes they're flipped, sometimes we're asked to appreciate that the person who is losing their mind is being afflicted by the person straight person in the sense of the non-comedic character, the abbot to the
yeah.
Lou Costello, who is establishing the rules of behavior, the very rules that make the person who's losing it lose it.
The argument that Chilton is making, and then I think we'll see this get unpacked even further in another article, is that when you watch the show over and over again, you realize that the straight characters are actually just as weird in their own way,
Mm-hmm.
in their insistence upon the rules and their lack of empathy,
Their
right?
inability to see the oddness of what is being
Yeah.
perceived by the character on the edge.
Yeah, I think one of the best sketches of this entire show does the opposite of this, right? It's the one with the baby thinks people can't change, that one. Um and that like the whole buildup of the sketch is he's having a meltdown. He gets more and more aggressive and he's yelling and everybody at the party is like, oh, are we going to have to intervene here? And then suddenly one character has empathy for him and says to everybody else, hey, it's okay. Let him hold the baby. People can change. And that is followed then by this like not it's funny, but it's not like a gag. It's like him having a memory of fun times with his friends and feeling okay about himself.
I am feeling such a swell of emotion. it is
Yeah.
it is almost overwhelming.
And the whole room recognizes that, right? They like you see them go through this change where like they see him as a hostile person and then they flip and they're like, "Oh no. It's almost like even it's not about the baby being able to understand that people can change. It's about the adults.
And Chilton kind of hits this by saying, instead of trying to make sense of the world, there is an acceptance of senselessness
Yeah.
in the way that, yes, here is our comedic character who has picked up a baby or been handed a baby, and the baby cries and he says, "Oh, babies don't like me. It's okay
Hmm.
though. I can understand why. I'm a shitty person.
No, it I used to be a piece of shit.
Sorry, I used to be a piece of shit." And then it goes far beyond any acceptable place,
Yeah.
but then it has the twist that you described.
Yeah. Yeah. And that sentence right there, that's the part that is my struggle and that I where I see myself through the show. He doesn't try to make sense of the world. He exposes its inherent senselessness. That's the thesis statement of
Mm-hmm.
Christian Sager is I am constantly trying to make sense of the world. That's what this fucking show is. Like it I think we even say that in the intro, don't we?
Yeah, just a little bit better. My friend Amy, which is how I describe my therapist, uh, her big thing is I, Charlie, need to learn how to just sit in the discomfort.
Yeah, that is my problem too.
Yeah. And that's great. That's certainly treating the symptom. But finding out what your discomfort is such a huge thing.
Yeah,
Being able to
yeah,
understand what has made you uncomfortable can can give you the strength to sit in it, or also discern what is actually not discomfort but is actual what is an actual problem that needs to be dealt
hmm
with. You know, your toxic friendship, yours, Chris, the one that you're delivering to me. No,
yeah.
the
No,
toxic
I'm
friendship that you're
making it
in.
worse.
Yeah, it's terrible. No, the toxic relationship you're in, you don't need to stay in.
Hmm.
The embarrassment you're feeling about the thing you just did, you can feel that and keep moving.
I'm gonna go back to the online dating well. Um, a thing that I read in trying to understand better about like what makes relationships work is couples who are able to uh, sit well with discomfort and treat each other with grace in discomfort.
Yeah.
And like when you think about that out loud, that's uncommon.
Yes. Oh, a thing just hit me when you were saying that. Um, so the reason that something just hit me while you were saying that is that essentially you were laying out some rules for behavior, and I don't mean rules that were going to be then like fall in line, follow the rules, but more like,
Yeah.
oh, here's a structure for how to approach situations. And if we
Hmm.
don't have a structure, then we lose our minds, right? If you lose the plot, you cannot function. And the more you understand the rules and the more rules that there are, the more comfortable you can be and the more limited the things that can happen are. And that's comfortable and that's safe. And then when something gets out of whack, if there are too many rules, if there are too many possibilities, if there is a rule for behavior that does not cannot be reconciled with some other rule for behavior that's kind of crashing
Yeah.
in a way, and this is who said this. The Sam Anderson article has this. I think you should leave is obsessed with rules, he says. His
Yeah.
characters argue like lawyers over everything. Whether you're allowed to schedule a meeting during lunch, no. Whether celebrity impersonators are allowed to slap party guests at certain price points, yes. Whether you're allowed to swear during a late night adults only ghost tour, it's complicated. Robinson understands a nasty little paradox about rules. The more you believe in them, the more conscientious you are, the more time you will spend agonizing, worrying, wondering if you are doing things right.
Yeah. And I think that gets down to the heart of as well, like my connection to the show and that like I'm a rules follower. Um
Yes. Yeah. I am
and
too.
and I don't mean like rules like the law. I mean, like
I totally understand.
behavioral etiquette.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you should know how to do a thing, how to handle yourself in a situation. And when you can't handle yourself, when you don't have a rule to follow, then you're improvising or you're learning something new and it can be deeply uncomfortable, which is a lot like what a kid experiences all the time.
Yeah, and that goes back to the like all these characters are essentially adults acting like children on purpose.
Yeah. Or
Um,
or adults who have not grown up in a certain kind of situation. And when they finally are confronted by it, all they have is childish behavior.
which then gets to, and I'm going to tie it back into the Anderson article. That that's why this speaks to our moment in time. That like many of us adults are acting like children and have been for the last decade.
And I
Um,
would say many of us adults are in a situation now that we never had the rules established for.
yeah, Um, he says, this obsession makes the show a perfect comedy for our overheated cultural moment. The 21st century United States is infamously a preschool classroom of public argumentation. Our one true national pastime has become litigating the rules at high volume in good or neutral or very bad faith. Norms, a concept previously confined to psychology textbooks, has become a front page concern. Donald Trump's whole political existence seems like some kind of performance art stunt about rule breaking. The panics over cancel culture and the woke mob, these are symptoms of a fragmented society wondering if, in a time of flux, it still meaningfully shares social rules. Every time we wander out into the public square, we risk ending up screaming or screamed at, red faced, in tears. So, case study. As Charlie and I are recording this, Rob Reiner was murdered last night. And our president decided that he was going to post about this on social media.
He
And
did not.
he posted a very ugly, gloating
Fuck.
social media post about how the reason why Rob Reiner was murdered was because he was obsessed with Donald Trump and he wouldn't stop talking about him. And that is exactly what Anderson's describing here. That's exactly what this show speaks to, right? Is that like it's this exactly like it makes us constantly question about are there any social rules at all anymore, right? Like
Why is this okay?
why
Is the
yeah,
other question. Yeah.
yeah, and it is, another good example here, right? Like you're parenting in the middle of all of this. And I know a number of my friends who are parents struggle with this. How do you explain that the most powerful person in the world can behave like this and get away with it without being held accountable for it? You know, and yet still try to somehow emulate or role model uh, positive social behaviors.
I mean, you try not to let it become a point of discussion. Like you try to protect your kids from seeing this. I am,
But that, I mean,
no, I hear
that's
you. I
just
hear you.
avoidance, right? Eventually it's going to catch up to
Is it
them.
just avoidance? I mean, like, I'm not letting my 11-year-olds read the New York Times.
No, but I'm not going to tell you how to parent, but like
No, no, no. No,
eventually,
you
right?
shouldn't,
Like
Chris.
you've got to have a conversation about it. You've got to say like, this is a thing that happened. You're going to hear about this thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the Rob Reiner example, but
No, no, no,
something,
no, no.
right?
Yeah, yeah. But let me get to the end of this thought too. I'm trying to keep my kids from reading the news.
Hmm.
I can't really. My 13-year-old,
Yeah.
my 11-year-olds, my twins, they're still in a place where they're not asking to read the New York Times app.
But
Uh, no, wait, wait,
do
wait,
they
wait.
need the New York Times to know about this? I would think it's all over social media. It
They're
wouldn't
not on
even.
social media. Are you out of your mind?
No, I'm not, dude. I mean, you're keeping your kids off of social media, but like
Yes.
90% of the kids out there that are your kids' age are already on social media.
Oh, but you forget, dude. I don't give a shit about other people's kids.
This Charlie, let's back up for a second here. We're not talking about your kids or your parenting. We're talking about parenting in the abstract.
Here's what I wanted to go after. I wanted to make it about me because I'm who's talking. No, we've talked about why horror, because it helps you experience in a safe place strong emotions that are difficult.
Yes. Yeah.
Turns out I should have been taking cringe comedy in small doses in order to prepare myself for this this feeling of what is happening all the time.
Yeah.
How do I bring my kids into that? Is really where I was going. I don't
Uh,
want to give them the New York Times so they can read about this Rob Reiner story, including this new knowledge that you have given me that there was a post like that from our president.
but how do you, if we're talking about cringe comedy as a way to inoculate yourself so that you as an adult can handle these things,
I don't believe it's
how do
inoculation.
you?
I think it's
Okay.
working out. I think it's being able to handle it.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
think that you can stop it from happening in this case.
How do you teach children to handle it?
It's an excellent question, dude. I mean, this is part of the like, how do you teach empathy? Should you teach empathy? How much should you let someone be toxic toward you? And how
Yeah.
much should you like say, no, there will be none of this?
Well, so there's another paragraph in this piece that I think maybe helps me to understand this a little more. He says, Robinson's characters are rarely proud of their antisocial behavior. They want desperately to follow the rules. They are searching as hard as they can for the elusive balance between their self-interest and the interests of the group.
Oh, wow.
They just can't seem to find it. And that pain leaks out of their eyes, and then before long, the screaming begins.
God, well, that sounds like horror, doesn't it?
There is, we may have skipped over it already, but there is definitely like a reference somewhere in here to this show and shows like it acting the same way horror does, as you were just referencing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you
But
you set me on this path with some of the notes earlier, and
yeah,
also with this entire show. But it does seem like it seems like you can enjoy this show as a kind of spectacle of emotions, or you can be compelled by this show because it seems to give you a little bit of armor or a little bit of exercise or a little bit of like familiarity, rehearsal with the kind of extremes of emotion that we see more and more of, the more that you can, people can put their feelings on the internet immediately while it's happening
mhm.
and it can spread to everyone all at once.
I think I think what I'm learning about myself from this episode is that as a person with anxiety, well, regardless of whether I'm a person with anxiety, but as a person with anxiety, I am not forgiving enough of other people when they can't uh, control their anxiety.
Right. Right. You have a bit of that. I'm working as hard as I can. Why don't you put some effort into it?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about your response to, we have more from the Keegan Kelly article in Cracked that is explicitly about anxiety and panic, saying that
Yeah.
this show actually represents anxiety, the condition, better than most everything.
hmm Yeah. So Kelly, and I think it's this piece, the whole article hinges around that I think you should leave is incredibly popular on Reddit, and that there's like an entire Reddit that just is constantly churning out conversation between people that is like micro analyzing the sketches,
Mm-hmm.
and that the gist of all of them seems to boil down to I see my own anxiety in here. So
Yeah.
here's a quote from one of these Reddit users. Anxiety makes you prepare yourself for potentially stressful situations by running through all the scenarios that could happen, including some very bizarre and very unlikely ones. Tim Robinson runs with these ideas and turns them up to 11. A lot of the sketches feel like the scenarios of someone with a lot of anxiety. Then, instead of de escalating them, they make it even worse. I should say, we might have skipped over this already, but there, in a few interviews, Tim Robinson acknowledges he suffers from anxiety and it's like a struggle, and he feels like it's getting worse the older he gets.
Yeah. And he backs off from doing media as much as he can.
I don't know if that is true as much as that he's made it pretty clear that he doesn't like doing it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess maybe sometimes you're not allowed to not do it.
Yeah. It's interesting. This has come up recently. Like, you kind of have to be a superstar to be able to put your foot down and say, like, I'm not going to do it. Like, apparently, uh Leonardo DiCaprio like never did press for like years until One Battle After Another came out, because he's like so famous. He was able to just say, no, I'm not going
Yeah.
to do that.
But he was trying to make that movie successful.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So back to this Reddit user, they say the characters in the show often attempt to resolve a slightly awkward situation by making it 10 times more awkward. And the character is so quick to become defensive, like they knew what would happen was a possibility.
So what do you think? I mean, is that helpful to see someone rehearse your worst fear?
Um, it is not helpful for my anxiety. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it is helpful for me to see, um, it is helpful for me to see and then unpack that the reason why people are behaving that way is because their anxiety has been triggered.
I think this comes back now to um, how it kind of creates a space to enjoy that, whether you're enjoying it as a witness to your shadow self or as a witness to what you imagine is happening in the world. There's a piece from Collider by Hannah Hunt who says, I think you should leave was fast, abrasive, deeply specific, and willing to push a single uncomfortable premise to such a ridiculous extreme that the only options for a viewer were joy, panic, or some uneasy combination of the two, which is almost like someone saying, we can we can fry those circuits that make you upset. We can try at least.
I think that sentence, again, like we keep coming on to this dichotomy that there's sort of two ways that people watch this show. And I think that sentence is like another way. Like, I'd never watched it with panic. I
Yeah.
watched it with joy.
Yeah.
There was never a point where I was like, ooh, I have to look away, right? And it sounds like that's exactly how you watch it.
I do. I mean, I have to skip sketches sometimes. Watching it for this recording, feeling a little bit like it was homework. Like I gotta do this.
Yeah.
I still had a few moments of I cannot live through this. I found that the easiest sketches to watch were when everyone was working toward the same goal, but some people were doing it badly or more
Hmm.
effectively.
Baby of the year.
Baby of the year, tables,
Yeah.
and it's since now we're starting to speak in the language of joke number 13. Baby of the year is a science fiction story. It is the positing
Yeah.
of a awards presentation in which people are judging babies, and one of the babies arouses the most anger. Like they call the baby a motherfucker,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like it's like 1984 almost.
It is. Yeah. It's like a Ray Bradbury short story. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's enjoyable in kind of a, oh my God, look at the tightrope they're walking here.
Hmm.
Tables is about a driver's education film or driver's education set of films that have clearly been viewed by the teacher over and over again. And he's tired of the uh, distracting question of what is this woman's job? It has to do with tables. So then he's watching it, and the kids who are watching it are all like, what is her job? I don't know. Why is she talking about tables? And he's like, it doesn't matter. Pay attention to the film. They're all trying to work to having a driver's ed class
Yeah.
and they have different things that are distracting them,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
no one in that is losing. Well, actually, the people who are losing it are on the screen in
Yeah,
the
the
class.
characters in the video, yeah.
Yeah. Or the most uncomfortable, pig in a Nixon mask running through your house thing, because he's talking to you, the viewer, and asking you to connect with him.
Yeah.
I find that hilarious and I find no cringe at all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so what you and I just went through just now, the last 45 seconds, is why people think the people, I mean the writers of these articles think that this show is so successful is because the way that you can talk about those pieces make it benefit from rewatch culture. So you watch it over and
Yeah.
over and over again. And the episodes are so short that you can binge one during your lunch break. The sketches are easy to loop. I've watched them on YouTube. I've probably watched um, the prank show sketch on YouTube easily 1,000 times
Okay,
since it first.
explain the prank show sketch.
Um, the premise of this is that there's a prank show in which the host, whose name is Carl Havoc, puts on a like prosthetic mask and bodysuit that makes him look like another person. It makes him look like a bizarre, weird,
Yeah.
unreal person. And that he will go into a mall and walk up to people and say and do zany things and it will spook them and then they'll get this for the content of their show. And the minute he walks into the mall, he has an emotional breakdown and cannot deal with the very concept of it to the point that he says, uh, I don't know if I want to be around anymore.
And his producer says to him, you feel like you don't want to be around anymore because you've got all that stuff on you? Yeah. It's like, well then, yeah, let's dump it. Let's just dump this segment.
But that's the whole sketch. And like I
It's a
I
beautiful moment and it's a
yeah.
setup for a punchline.
But it's hilarious, but it is also like I related to it emotionally where I was like, yeah, I'm not wearing a suit, but I believe what he says is I've got too much fucking shit on me. And that's what 2021 felt like. I had too much fucking shit on me,
It's
you know?
so hot. I don't want to do
Yeah,
this anymore.
that's how I felt. And and it did make me think like ugh, not and listeners, I'm not saying this in like a suicidal ideation way, but it just made me think like I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Like I believe the phrase I've heard used repeatedly is all right, stop the world, I'm ready to get off. You know,
Yeah.
like it's too much. And that, you know, on top of capturing like anxiety or you know, the empathy for somebody who's having a little bit of a mental breakdown, this show is also able to capture that bit of just like I don't even think that that's necessarily anxiety. It's just a sense of feeling I think most people in the world have. I went into a business meeting this morning, and the vice president of enrollment at my university showed us a stress toy that she has that was a dumpster on fire.
Good God.
And everybody in the room related to it. And we're like, oh my God, yes. And I was like, this is the point. Our entire world is that everybody feels like their world is a dumpster on fire. I don't think we're doing this right anymore, folks.
Can I tell you a work story?
Yeah.
I had to write a official letter to the institute level committee. I'm going to be vague. The letter was an uncomfortable thing we had to collectively declare as a group of librarians. We had to say that something had gone down. It was bad news and it had to stop. And we were hanging someone out to dry a little bit. That makes it sound like we were selling someone out or doing something unfair, but we had to explain that someone had not handled it the way they needed to handle it. And
Hmm.
now there's a problem and we got to fix it. And when I went into that meeting, I knew that everyone would be uncomfortable with the fact that we had to compose a letter that made it harder on one of our colleagues. So the thing I decided to do was get ahead of it and just say straight out, hey, this is an uncomfortable thing that we all have to do. What I want to do is have a conversation about what needs to go into this. And then I'm going to go away and write the letter. So we know that this is painful, but we can do it because we are obligated to do it. And I have had 3 different people tell me separately, that was great. You did really well. The letter's really good. What it came from was saying, this situation is terrible. I am not going to make it worse. And I'm not going to make any of us pretend it's not happening. Help me and I'll get it done. Which connects completely to this line in the Collider piece. Everyone knows the feeling of watching a situation get worse because someone refuses to let go. The I think you should leave subreddit becomes a space where that emotional recognition turns into collective joy. There was no way we were going to get to joy in that situation, but we could get to a settled place if everyone let go of the idea of it not being hurtful or anxious in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're describing right now, your work situation and how you and your colleagues handled it, is the antithesis of a I think you should leave sketch, right?
Which
In
is how
that,
you want your life to go most of the time.
yeah, I think that's exactly it, right? Is like uh, presumably from what you're describing, this off-screen colleague was a Tim Robinson character and I Think You Should Leave, behaving badly.
Oh my God.
And you all, instead of reacting and being like, you're not following the rules, you sort of stepped aside and said, okay, this is uncomfortable, but we have to deal with this. But we're going to deal with it as like mature, empathetic adults.
Yeah. And like the leveling up that we could have done is if if we'd had that kind of conversation before it got to this point, which I don't know that I could have done. I think that I would have had the same experience I have with cringe comedies. Like I couldn't stand to be in the discomfort of that situation. You know, maybe I needed to watch a few more episodes before I could actually go straight to the person.
You've been listening to Super Context, a podcast autopsy of media.
How it's made and how it informs our everyday culture.
Our theme music is Human Factor by Mile Marker.
And you're listening to Drive Fast by 3 Chain Links.
All show notes are available at patreon.com/supercontext.
And you can email the show at supercontextpodcast@gmail.com.
I'm available on Blue Sky as @ChristianSager.
And I am not available. I have a scorched earth policy on social media. 2 N's, 2 T's.